All right, we are live. Thank you for joining today, everybody. And it looks like everyone's starting to trickle into the webinar. Awesome. CJ, welcome.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. Love to be here.
We have one more guest joining us, Rolando, so I'm hoping he'll be dialing in very, very shortly. In the meantime, what part of the world are you dialing in from?
I'm dialing in from the beautiful downtown Long Beach, New York, where I'm a lifelong resident here. My office is 3 blocks from the ocean, and my commute is 7 blocks on a very small motorcycle. So we're in Long Beach. We have offices around the world, but all of our writing and our whole team works out of Long Beach, New York, about 10 miles east of Kennedy Airport.
Yeah, no, I've been there. I drove there actually in the summer here to the beach. Strategically, because my wife likes to go to this like natural food store right near the beach across from Starbucks.
Bob's Natural. They're right downstairs from us. Bob's Natural Foods. Yep.
Are you literally right up?
I'm right above. Yeah, they're 110 West Park. We're 100 West Park. And I'm a big fan of their chocolate and organic peanut butter smoothies. Although it doesn't seem to be making me lose any weight, but it tastes really good.
I usually get the hummus wrap. All right, hold on one second. While people are joining, let me just call Rolando. And while we're live, oh, it looks like Ron's dialing in from Portland. Yeah, why doesn't everyone throw in the chat where they're dialing in from? And even, you know what, in the chat, drop in what you're expecting to get out of today. Like, if today's webinar would go stellar, what do you want to get out of today's webinar?
Oh, this is cool. We got someone from Paris, AJ in Montana. So there's a guy I deal with Amazon who's from Montana, and he grew up on a ranch, and interesting life things where they actually participated in cash trading and branding. I guess I don't know what kind of animals, but big animals. Argentina.
Different lifestyle out there, huh?
Yeah, good guy. The really great guy, smart guy.
Guys, drop in there what you want to get out of today. What are your expectations? We want to deliver. We're here. I'm paying CJ lawyer wages to join us today to share free information.
Oh, cool. Someone from Israel. That's how we've been trying to hook up with Payoneer to have a sellers event in Tel Aviv.
That's awesome. Rolando's on. Where is Rolando? Rolando, you need to actually dial into the admin panel. Let me write him. We got to get this going, Rolando. Hold on.
All right, Jill from New York City. You know, we're just killing time right now and being friendly, getting to know you. So I want to make sure Rolando's on here. But I actually dated 3 girls named Jill back to back in my younger days. And my folks were really concerned about that. Oh, AJ, you grew up on a ranch also, huh? You know, one of the great things about Amazon and webinars like this and some of the events is that you get to meet people from like all over the world, all different lifestyles, and you get a lot of great perspectives. Awesome. Trademark, how to deal with hijackers, stealing your photographs and your images. All right, so far I think, you know, towards the end, if we don't answer all your questions, you know, ask, and we'll do our best to give you all the information you need. We have Amazon as a hijacker here. We see that all the time. other than your own factories, either in China or Vietnam and Thailand, Amazon is probably the most significant threat as a competitor to private label brands. We've got Richard. I don't know where Amazon is just not taking you seriously in your complaints and not acting appropriately. Yep, we'll try and talk about, Deborah, add-on products to your listings could help tremendously to get rid of hijackers where they can't deliver what you're delivering because of the specific add-on. Brittany, some of the information we're going to give you is very, very usable on eBay and some of the other platforms as well. Our focus is more on Amazon, but IP law and your IP rights is the same regardless of the platform.
All right, without further ado, look, we're not going to waste any time here. Rolando's on, but he's still having a hard time getting into the presentation. So let's just take care of some housekeeping. We want this to be interactive. This is an hour webinar. Definitely appreciate everyone for joining. CJ, I'm really happy you're joining today as well because you bring years and years of experience. I do want to address a lot of these questions that you've been that people have been posting in the Q&A through the presentation. So make sure we trickle that in. And so let's get started. A little about myself, right? I'm the founder of Skubana. It's an operational system to run your business. I also happen to be a very, very large seller on Amazon and also off Amazon. And I wrote an awesome book called Cheaper, Easier, Direct. Of course, it's on Amazon. Check it out. It's like the best $2 you'll ever spend. It's really my blueprint of how I've created my success on Amazon. So Rolando, we'll say Rolando is dialing in and out, but Rolando has been a longtime friend of mine in the Amazon world. He's also in the top 1% of sellers on Amazon. Started off in the headphones accessory space, and now his real role is really helping people sound better. So if you're looking to sound better, or if you're just trying to learn from somebody who does both reselling and is a private labeler, this is the gentleman to go see. Again, I'm hoping he joins us in the middle. All right.
All right.
Oh, I hear Rolando.
All right.
Rolando, I just gave you a quick bio. There you are. Beautiful.
All right.
All right.
Just in time.
All right. All right. All right. There was some technical difficulties that we were having here. And let me make sure that you guys can see me.
You look great.
Okay, good.
If you can tell, I just actually shaved off my head, so I was going to cover it up. But CJ was like, Chad, you got to own it. So
all right. All right. All right. So you want me to talk about myself or let you guys do it for me?
I did. I just did a brief introduction for yourself. I think I did you justice. Okay, right now we're running a little bit late, and I want to make sure we speed through the presentation, but people will see how good you are as we progress through the webinar.
Cool.
CJ, give us your 30-second pitch.
Nowhere near as good looking as Rolando or in as good a shape. But I think that's a professional travesty. So what my law firm does, we're about 20 people strong. We focus on the needs of Amazon sellers. Half the business has nothing to do with the law. It's drafting plans of action to get Amazon sellers reinstated. The other half has everything to do with the law. It has to do with intellectual property rights, defending sellers from baseless complaints, and then helping private label guys and small to medium-sized brands protect their intellectual property rights. So we help sellers both on the legal front and on the non-legal front. And today we're going to be focusing on hijackers, which has a lot to do, from my end of it, with using the law to protect your rights.
Awesome. And I'm actually in the chat box. People have been writing, hey, we essentially got hit on Amazon. We shouldn't be hit. We are the manufacturer. How do we prevent people? So we're going to cover all those questions today. There's a lot of questions in the chat. I'm just moderating here. This is a very different type of webinar for me, but hopefully I'm going to be asking the right questions and facilitating a really, really good dialogue here.
All right.
All right. So this is our expectations for the day for what people that are listening on will learn. So number one, and first and foremost, is how to protect yourself and defend yourself, both on an offense and defense approach against listing hijacking. We're going to go through an in-depth hijacked listing case study. And then Rolando is going to share every software that he uses to protect his Amazon listing in the end. That'll be at the end, so make sure you're listening on through the presentation, because that's going to be a very, very fascinating share. And then there's going to be an offer at the end as well that you're not going to want to miss. So, CJ, take it away.
All right, I'm going to run through this really quick. So again, we're trying to wrap this up in an hour. This is basic law school for sellers. Okay, what is a trademark violation? A trademark is the Nike swoosh, the McDonald's M, the Target circle, Apple's mark on the computer. If you take someone else's mark and you stick it on your shirt, that's a trademark violation. If you're selling a product that's the real deal, that actually has the logo on it, it's not a trademark violation. If you take someone else's mark and you stick it on something that's not theirs, that's a violation. Copyright violation, a lot of the questions were about this. Copyright violation for sellers, you need to know you can't use somebody else's images and you can't use somebody else's verbiage. You can't cut and paste, okay? If someone's doing that to you, they're clearly violating your copyright protections, whether you filed or not. And if you're doing it, stop. Take your own pictures. You can write the same type of statements, but don't use someone else's verbiage. Use your own words.
Hey, CJ, I got a question for you. Can you use images? Let's say you're a reseller. Can you use the manufacturer's images? Do I need any special permission for that, or can I just go ahead and use it willy-nilly?
No, you shouldn't. They own the rights to those photographs, those images. Take your own pictures of the product to put them up there. Now, what happens is a lot of times the manufacturers will put the images up, or another seller created the detail page. And in some states in the United States, it's a violation to jump on that listing. In other states, it's not. So I tell sellers, if you're getting on the listing, you might as well do it and sell, and we can help you out if the bell tolls, because there's a split in the decisions in the United States. So don't use their pictures. Take your own of the product. But if they're already up there, you know, you may want to jump on the listing as long as you're selling genuine products. Okay. So it's kind of both. All right, trade dress is an unfiled group of intellectual property rights. That's the whole shape and look and feel of a product. It's the color. Like some of you may know the Beauty Blender. It's a sponge women use for makeup. Or there's a humidifier that's in the shape of a teardrop. Those have fantastic protected trade dress because of the whole look, shape, and color and feel. And that's what trade dress is. Unauthorized sales and map pricing, as far as sellers are concerned, are virtually BS. Okay? They're not enforced. They're not intellectual property rights. And unless you signed a map agreement, you're not bound to it, even though brands use it all the time to hurt sellers. And transmutation are just mechanisms that we have that seem to work on Amazon. We take things that are not really intellectual property rights, but if you do certain things, Amazon sort of accepts that they are.
Give me an example.
Okay. For example, map pricing, okay, is not an intellectual property right. It's simply not. Okay, a cat is not a dog. Map pricing is not intellectual property. But we've seen success with private label sellers that if you put in your agreement with your distribution companies and on your boxes and on your invoices that by buying or selling this product, you are agreeing that map pricing is an intellectual property right, Amazon buys it. So we use this word transmutation, which is kind of a made-up word, that sometimes, at least as far as Amazon is concerned, you could take something that is not an IP, and by agreeing to it or putting it certain places, Amazon will treat it as if it is an IP right and help you get rid of hijackers.
Awesome, awesome. And so there's a question that came in here, Abdel from Slab Makers. So if someone uses your text in their listing, is that a copyright violation?
Yes, if they cut and paste your verbiage, that's a copyright violation. It doesn't even have to be filed. You don't need to file your copyright. You can, but you don't have to. Now, some generic language is only so many ways you can say it's in a square box. But if they cut and pasted your language, they're violating your copyright, and it's kind of a slam dunk one to get that hijacker off.
Awesome.
Okay, all of these things, these are all trademarks. You look at it, you know instantaneously what to expect. You know your MacBook's not going to crash. You know the McDonald's fries are awesome and the hamburgers suck. Okay? These are all valid marks. Okay? So I'm not a big fan of it. I love the fries, but the burgers I can do. The Big Macs are good. But Coca-Cola, you see the symbol. It's a visceral level of what you can expect from that product. You cannot take these and put them on your own T-shirt and sell it. Okay, this is an example where I can use to show what's not. Okay, what is not a mark? Garcinia cambrosia is a supplement that just did tremendously well. What it does, it makes you feel a little bit nauseous, so you eat less and you lose weight. It's always better to exercise, but a lot of Americans, we'd rather take anything rather than get out and go for a walk. Here are the examples. A picture of a fruit or anything that occurs in nature, like a snowflake or a flower, you can't get a trademark over it because it exists in nature, okay? The facts on here, that weight management, 100% pure, GMO-free, those types of generic words are not subject to copyright. That it's a vegetarian capsule, not subject to any intellectual property rights. The name of the substance, Garcinia cambrosia, cannot be protected. It's the name of a substance. The only thing on this bottle, and I fought with this lawyer a lot, is you see the little symbol over the eye, how it's a little leaf? That is protected, okay? Everything else practically on this product is not protectable at all. So even if a big giant company makes a complaint against you, if they're saying the picture of a fruit or generic terms are protected, they're full of it. They're not even protectable, let alone protected. So that's a lot of things on this bottle that just demonstrate what is clearly not IP protected.
Yeah. So somebody wrote, are there any violations to be aware of when posting videos to Amazon? So this is a new feature that's coming out for enhanced brand content. Is there anything that sellers should be aware of for videos, do's or don't do's?
Make your own videos as much as possible or have them made for you. You can't take clips of other people's products. There are certain things that are old enough that they're not protected to become in the public domain. But for sellers, if you want to just stay clean and avoid suspensions, then just create your own content. You can get it done really inexpensively. Don't take other people's images, videos, or verbiage. Create your own.
And then you can also buy royalty-free video footage clips. I don't know if you've seen that. As long as you pay for it and then it's commercial use, you can use that as well.
You can, but we've seen complaints arise from it where you're successful in defending yourself on that complaint. And we do that also. Some of our blog posts, we don't have time to have every image made for us. So we buy images and we keep really good records for it. But if you can create your own, you're much safer. And if you're going to create your own, you got to be careful who you're having make it. Okay. If you're using like some of these services where it's getting by other places that may not be trustworthy, you want to make sure they're really creating something original for you, because they can tell you they did and it may not. And you can easily Google image something and get an idea of whether it's on the web anyplace else. If it is, avoid it and use people you trust. You can use your own camera. You can use your iPhone, but create your own content.
And Jansen, we'll get to your question. She's talking about how sellers are jumping into their listings and creating variations. We're about to jump into that topic right now. So Rolando, take it away.
So thank you, Chad. One of the things that I like to do when we're talking about hijacking is really put some definition around that, because what's hijacking to me or maybe hijacking to Chad may not be hijacking to CJ. So one of the things that I like to put is just a very simple definition. If you have something that's taken from you or changed or modified, more than likely it's going to be hijacked. And as it pertains to Amazon, what we're talking about is competitors or some other entity changing the listing. They could be changing the title. They could be actually taking away images, changing content, all of these things. And we're going to get into an example of what that looks like. Yeah.
Cool.
So, and before we get into that, what we want to just highlight is an actual case of what's happening. And some of you that are online right now for this webinar probably have had some real life examples of what a hijacking. And in this case, this particular hijacker created some problems for an Amazon seller. And they did all of the things that they knew to do, and going through seller support, contacting them, letting them know. And in this particular case and in several others, it can take weeks, if not months, when you try this approach on your own, And the bottom line is that right now, and from talking to other sellers as well as folks that are on the Amazon side, they are overwhelmed with the number of cases. And I'm sure CJ could talk to that about the number of cases that go to Amazon on a daily basis. And part of that is the flood of number of sellers that are simply on the marketplace now. I've heard as high as about 50 sellers a day come onto the marketplace every single day. And those are from around the world. They could be from China, they could be from the US, they could be from Europe, but they're coming in and it's creating a lot of havoc, and Amazon just doesn't have a very good case management on that.
By the way, there's 5 million Amazon sellers today on the marketplace.
Yeah, just last year, there weren't there like 2.5 last year?
I think there's about 3, just under 3.
Yeah, so it's getting more crowded. And when you have more people in the same space or competing, you're going to create a lot of friction.
So there's just a few questions I want to address. Again, I'm just going to go through some housekeeping before we go to the next deck. Eli, can you trademark the map of the world? Yes or no, CJ? This is like lightning round here.
Generally, you can't. You can't trademark the map of the world. It's a public domain, but you can do certain things to get some protection. Like there's a lot of complaints about these scratch-off maps. They added the scratch-off process to it, and that has some IP protection. But your basic map, no. Or if you make it sort of artistic and not generic, then yes.
Cool. Someone wrote, isn't the whole NatureWise logo protected, not just the leaf, that image that we had on the previous slide?
Is that my friend at NatureWise? The answer is no. Okay, your packaging is not trade dress. The fruit is not trade dress. The name is not trade dress. If we fight it out, if we went all the way through, the only thing they would have protected would be the name, yes, NatureWise, and that little leaf. But yeah, the name is protected. That's their name, and they have filed for that. The rest of it, no.
Got it. Kim wrote, actually, this is an important one. What about someone else photoshopping their product in our images?
I'm not really sure what you're talking about. When I hear about photoshopping, they're usually taking someone else's image, right? Like a manufacturer's image and altering it a bit. If you're doing that, you're kind of walking a bit into a gray area. It's still their image, but how they're going to relate it back, I don't know. I guess it depends on how good their photoshopping is. But it's just not wise. I mean, the goal is to stay in business. So it's just as easy to take your own image than Photoshop somebody else's.
All right, now we're going to start getting into the meat here.
And I'm glad that's a good tee off to this, because you're talking about sustainability on Amazon. And there really are folks that just go on to just be on and try to grab business right away. But if you're a seller and you want to have some sustained success, you want to look at the long term. Long-term picture, because that's really how you're going to get into that 7, 8, or 10-figure amount on Amazon. When we're talking about hijacked listings, this is just an example of, for us, we saw that in this case there's only one image, and for our listings we tend to have 5 or 6 images associated with a particular listing. So something was just not right the moment we looked at this listing. A couple of things that also happened if you look at the title. The title is very short. Our title tends to be a little bit more robust, up to the maximum that's allowed. The other thing is the bullet points themselves. We go also to the maximum on the bullet points, because bullet points are used for SEO purposes, and so we try to max those out. In this case, there's only 3. And what we also see here is that you can also see that you have 5 other sellers, so we had some cleaning up to do there. And then we also lost the buy box. Where we were in the buy box and we're not in the buy box anymore. So these are some of the things that can happen when we're talking about hijacking. All of these elements can be changed. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's all of the above.
And so just to clarify, the seller, so this is your listing. The seller came in, uploaded their image images into Seller Central, and they got sort of power of the detail page, and then their information was exposed, superseding your information, correct?
Correct. That is correct.
Yes. Very, very common.
And very frustrating. And we'll get into the other stuff here. So one of the things, now, if we're looking at modifying, if we're looking at maybe thwarting some of these hijackers, this is what our listing should have looked like if we were to add some other elements to it. We tend to modify the images, And so this is just an indicator of what is going on here with this particular listing, where this is what it should have looked like, where we had bonus items and bonus cushions. We're really talking to the consumer here and telling them, hey, when you do this, you should expect that. And that's what you can do when we're talking about hijacking and we talk about offensive and defensive strategies. You really want to take a look at what is going to allow you to succeed. And one of the basic ways to do that is by creating a listing that allows you to make it more difficult for you, either competitors or other folks that are trying to counterfeit products. And that's by giving value to the customer. And this is, in this scenario, that's what you're looking at here with those images. Okay, so yeah, go ahead, yeah, that's fine. So one of the things that just here, this is just a cleaned up version of that hijack listings. You can see where we call out the two-pack bonus cushion. We're also on Prime, and we also tell the customer, hey, which a lot of times I would love to do. And in this case, it's an artificial bullet point that we added. If you buy from Global Tech, you'll be 100% happy, and our item won't suck like our competitors. All right. Now, we just kind of photoshopped that in, but essentially things that are going to create a little bit of a distinction between you and the other folks in the field is really what you ideally want to shoot for. As well as on the far left, what we do is we call out that bonus item. So it also puts those hijackers or competitors or counterfeiters on notice that if they're going to compete with you with this product, they better be ready to sell and provide the same product, because as a consumer, you can file a complaint with Amazon and say, hey, I never got that bonus item. And you better believe that Amazon takes those complaints very seriously, and they will more than likely suspend that listing from that seller or that counterfeiter. All right, now take a little sip of water here. Give me a second.
Take your time. CJ, anything to add? CJ, anything to add?
No, I agree with everything that you said. And the logistics, I think, are great. How you created that bullet point, and I love the note about how the competitors' products, suck. That's really good stuff. It really helps guys like me to knock the hijackers off when you build things into your listing. We're not pros at developing listings. We definitely help people add on to their products so consumers don't get the same product from somebody else that they get from you. And that's a great way of doing it. Just a really terrific way of doing it.
I'm glad to hear that from the lawyer. Man, that's terrific. That means we're doing something right. So there are three types of hijackers that we like to put them in three buckets: pop-up, opportunistic, and strategic. The pop-up is the kind of hijacking where somebody just jumps onto the listing, and we find that probably half the amount of the time they just go on and off because, Amazon sent them an email saying, hey, Global Tech is selling this for $100. You could go in at $99 and sell it too. And they're not even in the same business as we are. They just happen to get this email from Amazon. And a lot of times they go on. Sometimes they may actually be on there for a few hours and actually get an order and realize, oh, crap, I can't sell that. I can't really get that product. And they go off. No harm done there. Then you get into the more challenging ones. Opportunistic, I've heard from somebody I know that they would actually try to get on a listing on a Friday afternoon, stay on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and even into Monday afternoon because the listing seller wasn't paying attention to what's going on. And so if you're not really aware of what's going on and that you're already been hijacked, somebody's taking sales right from under you without knowing, right under your nose. And that's the opportunistic. And some of that happens around certain events, holidays, Cyber Week and all that other stuff. But the ones to really be concerned about, and I'm sure CJ could jump in on this one, are the strategic ones where you've got somebody that's taking the time to study your listing. They see what you sell. They're going to make a copy or a counterfeit of it. They're going to look at your price points. They may even find out where you're sourcing the product from and bring in something that looks very close to it or something or what we call a knockoff. And
can I jump in for a second, Orlando?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, the opportunist ones, we're seeing a company called Babyfoot, and their IP complaints that we've seen so far are all baseless. That's exactly what they're doing. They're waiting until right before the weekend. And in some communities, if you're observing the Sabbath and you're not paying attention or you're offline from Friday night to Saturday night, we're seeing a lot of that. And in terms of Amazon watching where they're getting your products from, there's a couple of great services in Asia where they're actually, you'll have your factory who's producing your product, and to protect you from Amazon finding out where you're getting your product from, they'll then go to a black box factory. It doesn't really make anything at all, but they're the factory whose address it's being shipped from. So if you're private label and either you're suffering from this or you're concerned about it happening, you can add another layer of protection to protect yourself from Amazon seeing where you're getting your products from. And a couple of questions were about how do you protect yourself from Amazon if they're the ones hijacking your listing. And this is one of the mechanisms. You use a black box factory, so they never know where you're getting it from.
That's true. That's true. And thanks for providing that insight. So combat tactics. What can we do to stop this, or what can we do to prevent it? And there are different points at which, and I'm seeing a bunch of great questions online that are coming through. There's a bunch of different tactics that you could use to A, prevent, B, to thwart, and then C, to take follow-up and hammer them after the fact. And what you really need to do is have a plan. I got to tell you, when we started on Amazon, if somebody said, hey, the moment you get on and start doing well, competitors are coming after you, I would have changed my approach from day one, but we didn't. But we learned, and that's why we're here offering this advice to those that are online listening and watching. Some of these tactics will depend if you're a reseller or a brand owner, because there are certain things inside of Amazon from a trademark perspective that you can do. You can go after, you can clamp down. But as a reseller, you have less of that power. But we also resell, so there's a lot of things you can do and you have leverage on. Just a matter of pulling the right levers. One of the things that my prior life was working at Philip Morris, we love to harp on was creating a moat. Anybody who's a smoker would know, if you're a smoker on this group, you probably are a Marlboro smoker, and there's a very good reason for that. And one of the things that we would do from a retail perspective as well as a competitive perspective was create a bigger moat. So it's harder and harder and harder to be attacked, the wider your moat will get. And we're going to get into some of those tactics.
All right.
And I'll let CJ take the floor on this one, and I'll jump back in a little bit.
All right. Basic things you want to do yesterday if you can, or tomorrow if you haven't done it yet, is protect your mark. Okay. You can go on the uspto.gov website, get the form, fill out the application for your mark, just the words only, or you can do how you write it, or both if you can afford it. But file, you can easily do it yourself. Assuming it goes through, then you want to file through what's called WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization, and that will file for you in various venues around the world. Your number one threat as a private label seller is your own factory, okay? So WIPO gets you some protection in China. It's really not the best, but it's better than nothing. Eventually, you want to file for protection actually in China.
And CJ, why is the factory your biggest threat?
Because they're gonna tool up. They're gonna run 100,000 units for you, and unless you got a really strong relationship, unless you have guanxi with that factory, they'll run another 100,000 units as soon as you leave and sell it to everybody else. And so what that creates, it's gray market. It's not really counterfeit because it's made in the same factory with the same raw materials. So that's your number one threat as a private label, is that your own factory runs extra units and sells it to other sellers.
So let me just tell you, my biggest way to combat that is to go to China and have a beer with the factory floor manager.
That's
go
it.
And have some Chinese whiskey, have some beer, get super, super drunk, enjoy, have great bread and Chinese wontons, and then go afterwards and get some a VIP foot massage together.
You know what?
Wow.
They say, there's a saying that it's better to do one bad thing with your boss than 1,000 good things. And that drinking with the manager is everything in China. I mean, relationships are important all over the world. We're all human. But in China, if they screw over someone they have a relationship with, they lose guanxi, they lose face. So if you're doing, you have to get on that plane. You have to go meet the person. You should have someone checking in and making sure and maintain that relationship. But them knowing you is such a disinclination to getting screwed over that it is absolutely vital.
And CJ, not everyone's a private labeler or brand on the call today. Should they also file a trademark or with the USPTO for their reseller name? And are you suggesting the word mark and the graphic mark?
You know, I'm not so sure. I guess if you're developing, you're growing quickly enough, protecting your name as a reseller, you can. I haven't really thought about that. It's certainly not a bad idea.
Let me weigh in on that. Let me weigh in on that because we resell and we have filed for a trademark. And from an Amazon perspective, even if it's a reseller brand, they will give you the same rights from a tools perspective, from a brand registry and all of that, like a brand owner. So if you could do that in your XYZ reseller, as long as you're doing providing products that you can provide, that you're bundling, that the manufacturer isn't doing themselves, and you're bringing some unique piece to that bundling, they will allow you to do that. So it has value. And if you're a reseller and you want to take your sales to that next level and you want Amazon to have a little bit more attention to your complaints, you definitely want to do the trademark process.
We're talking it through. I agree with you 100%. Because even if you're not developing something unique right now, you want to protect it going forward because you may develop into a different type of seller as the years pass. So I hadn't thought about that previously, but I really do think, yeah, if you're selling and you develop the name of your store, you might as well file. You could do it yourself and it's cheap.
And you can be on the Amazon Brand Registry 2.0, which we're going to get into that, but it gives you a lot more tools in terms of combating hijacked listings.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Yeah, do it yourself, and you might as well have it. It's one more small investment into your business. Yep. Copyright, if you're writing your own verbiage, you can file with the Copyright Office. You really don't have to. And Rolando's going to talk about ways. There was a question about how do you show that you wrote it first? How do you show what the listing used to look like? And Rolando's going to talk about that later. As you're creating your own packages, this trade dress, you really want to create a unique package that you're delivering. The packaging, the product, the color, how it's being delivered, what it looks like. All those things go into trade dress, which you don't need. You don't need to file for trade dress. And the more you develop it, the more protection you're going to have. Also, as you're selling, if you have a hijacker, act against every hijacker. It's a bit rare that you lose your IP rights, but if you don't enforce them, you could theoretically lose it and become public domain. So you want to protect your business and really take a steadfast approach that you're going to act upon every hijacker in some organized fashion.
I got to tell you, I'm looking at all the questions, and it's like dizzying to keep up with all the ones that are coming through. So, Chad, you're going to be a very busy guy here answering all these questions.
Yeah. So, okay. So Sue, who I know, she says, can you copyright apparel designs like dog clothing? Did the Innovative Design Protection Act of 2012 ever pass?
I don't know if it passed or not. You can do it if it's unique. All you're going to get, though, is something similar to like a design patent, which really doesn't give you a whole lot of protection. So let's say it's like a dog winter coat with a special latch, I don't know, for the collar or something. I'm not really a dog person. You can get protection for that, but other sellers can just come along and change it a bit. And so it does give you some protection, but it's not, the be all and end all.
And CJ, have you seen Brand Registry 2.0 not approving IP complaints since the third week of November?
We have, we do the cease and desist aspect for people who have Registry 2.0, and then the sellers do the sweep themselves because they've made it really easy and really efficient. In terms of rejects, I haven't seen any, but it doesn't mean it's not going on, because if you have Brand Registry 2.0, you really don't need us or anybody else to actually do the sweeps. We recommend highly that you send cease and desist letters first, because our business is so vulnerable to like bad reviews or A to Z claims or people buying it and breaking it and shipping it back in, that I think it's always better to try and get hijackers off amicably. But when it comes to 2.0, we've only heard really great things about it.
And what do you recommend for sellers that want to trademark their name in China? Because I've heard that there's been some trademark trolls in China that sit on certain names, prevent goods from being shipped from China. What have you seen on that front?
We've seen that when there's a successful product, big and small, they file for protection very, very quickly. We have full-time staff in China, and they call it Shenzhen speed. The Shenzhen is the name of a city that literally popped up over 20 years, and now it's just an incredible mega city. And they move very, very quickly. So as you're doing it, I would certainly say right away do WIPO. And then if you contact me privately, we can give you the name of lawyers in China who can file for you properly in China. But there are literally hundreds and hundreds of categories there. So you do need to move quickly. In China, you have a little bit of protection because the factories there cannot really sell as easily in mainland China as they can export. So you have some protection, but certainly WIPO gives you some protection, but not great. And you do want to file in China, once you have that ability.
All right, last question here. Are you aware of the Amazon Transparency Program, unique serialized QR code to stop counterfeit products being admitted to FBA inventory?
I am not aware of anything that Amazon does that actually turns out to be transparent or applied equally to sellers. Zero. I mean, we all thought that brand registry and brand gating was going to be the panacea of sort of private label brands, and they were going to give it to the Nikes as well as the smaller mom and pop brands. And my understanding is that people that were doing that were failing terribly, and the smaller brands were not being treated the same way. The NFL does sweep before the Super Bowl, and everyone gets their legs cut off, but the smaller brands do the same thing, and they're not as effective. So I don't think transparency really exists. I think there's a lot of great stuff about Amazon. I mean, they have given all of us tremendous, tremendous opportunities, and we're certainly not here to bash such a great platform that allows so many people to do so well. I mean, look, with a credit card and a telephone, you can compete worldwide, but there's certainly warts to the system, and transparency is not something that we've seen.
And I just want to address a question that came on here after I talked about trademarking the name of the company. We initially got some pushback from the trademark office. I guess Jan had a question in there about that. But there are so many, and you can explain this, CJ, a lot better than I can, things that that are categorized in a certain way that can apply one way or apply another. And a good lawyer can walk you through those steps on, well, this may apply in this section, but not that section. And although they initially reject it, you can come back with a rebuttal and get the process going again. Is that the way I understand it as well?
Yeah, they call it office actions. And yeah, if there's a problem, they'll notify you why you are or why you're not being approved. You can then respond to it. A lot of times, if you're really deep into that brand or you really believe in it, you want to work around it and try and get it through. Other times it's relatively new and the problems are significant. You might be better off pivoting. But yeah, we deal with those issues. I wouldn't say every day, but certainly every week or every month.
And I want to address another question that came up. Said, hey, you guys are giving good advice to the counterfeiters to build relationship with the manufacturers. And I'll just want to address it this way. A lot of the times, folks that come onto the market to do hijackings and counterfeit, they don't really have a big interest in sustainable activity. They're looking for quick buck. They're wanting to see if you know what, well, my hand gets slapped, and if not, I'm just going to keep on doing it. And then when their hands get slapped or hands get cut off, they're gone.
Now, you have a cultural issue. There are some fantastic business people in China. But one of the cultural issues is that they really did not have any IP laws before 2012. It didn't exist. Here in the States, as a child, you run around copycat, and it's sort of ingrained in our nature that it's not necessarily right to exactly copy someone. Culturally, that doesn't exist over there. So it's not necessarily they are doing something bad in their own eyes. This is sort of a new concept in China. Donald Trump didn't own his name until after he became president. There are Range Rovers made that are beautiful cars that are not owned by the British company. There's Starbucks and there was T-Bucks. And you don't think twice about it because it's just not something that's sort of ingrained into their culture. They're becoming more and more IP savvy because they want to make sure that they can compete in these areas. But it's a different. This is definitely also not only a legal issue, but also a cultural issue over there.
Awesome. Anything else you want to add on this slide, CJ?
Let's see. Images, verbiage, licenses. If you have a certain product, when we used to buy the discs for our computers, like when you bought, Word or WordPerfect on a disc, you thought you were buying the disc that you shoved in your computer. You weren't. You were buying a license to use it. A lot of products lend themselves to adding a license that if you sell it, they get a license either to use a portion of your website or a license for something else. Sometimes it's an easy add-on. Some warranties help. For just money back warranty, it really means nothing. Anybody can give money back. It's homogenous, and every seller gets that anyway with the A to Z claim. But something like Wusthof Cutlery, where they'll actually take the knives back to Germany and repair them, no one else can do that. So we look at products, we'll look at your warranty and alter it in a way that you actually develop an IP right from your warranty to protect yourself from hijackers.
That's an awesome nugget. Love it.
Okay, so comeback tactics. I'm going to focus in just on a few because we're running close to time, and I want to leave a lot of more time to answer all these great questions. There's a couple of ways to go about this, and I heard CJ say, we were on a call a couple of days ago, and we were talking about how to work through hijackings, and you know, I love to just put the hammer down, you know, just smash them because you know they're really like trolls and rats that are hungry after a piece of cheese, and I just want to exterminate them. And there are some instances for that, and those work. But you also have a different approach in maybe getting them off amicably, because what can happen is that you may get a lot of horrible false reviews that go on, and this Amazon's trying to cut that down, but it's still happening. So there's really 4 ways to try to approach this hijacking situation. You could do DIY, do it yourself as a seller. There's some tools there. Again, if you have brand registry 2.0, you're going to have a lot more ammunition behind you than if you don't. Third party. So if you have 10,000 SKUs, 100,000 SKUs, that's a ton of SKUs, and your organization is very large in terms of what you're selling every day, but don't have the resources internally, there are some third parties that can provide the service of managing your listings from a compliance standpoint, from a hijacking, brand management, to make sure that everything is kosher online for you. They're not cheap, but then again, you're giving them the ability to manage this for you and take that off your plate. So one of the things that we also recommend is legal measures. If you hire somebody like CJ and his outfit, then what you will find is that they're going to provide you some relief that you yourself cannot do. And they're very good at what they do. You want to have somebody that has experience with dealing with multitude of situations, because nothing is ever black and white. There's a ton of gray. I'm sure CJ could tell more about that. And then there's what I tend to like. There's a sweet spot. There's a blended approach where you may do some of the work yourself, or your organization, or somebody you appoint internally. And then you have some stuff that you hand off to an organization like CJ's part of. And here's what I've been able to do. I carried the ball to the 5-yard line. Go ahead and put it into the touchdown. Put it into the end zone for me. And they do a great job. They're that short yardage back that you hand the ball off and is able to go right through the line and get into the end zone. And they all have their pros and cons, but essentially those are the 4 approaches that what you're looking at when you're looking at dealing with hijackers.
Rolando, can you share with the audience right now your counterintuitive tactic approach that I think no one would really think about?
Yes, you know, I recently I learned about some, and I think it's maybe later on, but I'll jump to it now. You can actually get some juice out of the hijackings, and this will sound counterintuitive. That's actually 2. One, you can lay an ethical trap for the hijackers. Now, we're talking about, this is for savvy sellers. Do not do this if you're not savvy or you don't have the stomach for it, because there's some things that can not go your way. But if you have a real strategic counterfeiter or really bad hijacker, you want to gain some intel on them. You want to find out maybe where they're sourcing the product from. So maybe you want to let some of those purchases go. Let some customers complain because it's not the exact same product. You want to file a complaint with Amazon as a consumer rather than a seller, because now you will get Amazon's attention. The other way is to maybe buy all of the inventory this hijacker or counterfeiter has, because you can do 2 things with that. 1, you'll deplete them of the inventory and get rid of your problem. 2, you can file a complaint because it's not the exact product that you're selling. 3, you could get some juice by the SEO, by using the keyword and then making the purchase. And so getting juice from that hijacking situation allows you to boost your ranking within Amazon. All of this is very counterintuitive because for me, when I heard this, my approach is just smash all the rats, get rid of them. But if you're not getting some insight into why this is happening, who are the suppliers, what kind of product it is, how it's packaged, you're missing out on some really valuable intel. And for a lot of sellers, that's counterintuitive, and some sellers are not in a position to do that. But if you are in a position to do that, I highly recommend it because it'd be very effective in countering, probably thwarting other hijackers that are in the same group.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Anything else on the offense and defense here?
One of the things that we started doing is using AMS to go after our competitors. And you can list a product with sponsored product ads and list with ASINs, key ASINs. So if you have a particular area, if you're selling, I don't know, computers and you're Dell and you want to sell against Apple, you can sell your product alongside an Apple listing and it would appear inside the product detail page. That's one way to go after your competitors and go on the offense. And you can use that same mechanism as from a defensive perspective.
And just to clarify, you can't use the keywords of Apple. If you're selling a Dell computer, you cannot use the keywords in the back-end keywords of Amazon. So one way to combat that is to put them into the sponsored ads or AMS product ads so you can use that and then show up either on the right side of the rail or at the top.
That's right. That's right.
Hey, I'd also add, when you're talking about backwards, the back end using certain words, you got to be really careful you're not using Amazon's words. There's an ongoing and ever-growing list of words that Amazon deems to be theirs, that they own these words. And we've seen multiple sellers who've been suspended, and we've had to fight them all the way through to an arbitration because they're using what Amazon considers to be their words. So like Kindle or FBA or some of the other terms that you look at that list, and it says right there, it's not an exhaustive list. Be careful whose words you're using. Use your own verbiage and take a look at the words to make sure you're not violating. That's a real quick way to lose your listing or lose your account.
Awesome. All right, so I think we've covered a lot of this, guys. Stay tuned because at the end, again, Rolando's going to go through the software he uses to monitor and to take photos of his listing. So stay tuned. It's coming. There are people asking for it. It's coming momentarily. And
Chad, we got 8 minutes. So if you want to, I know we're probably
I think we've covered a lot of this DIY. This is really filing a valid complaint on Amazon. Is there anything quickly that you guys want to share on this?
I would just say don't file baseless complaints. Okay. One, you put your own account at risk. There's not really a great mechanism for seller versus seller complaints. You really want to find the substance to really knock them off. And so don't file baseless complaints. Don't be short-sighted. Keep your eye on the long-term profitability and the long-term of getting the hijackers off and keeping them off. So anyone can fill out this form, but you really want to make sure you have substance. You have some meat on the bones before you make your complaint.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're saying.
Yeah, we covered this. Anything else here? Value?
This is just in your complaint. Amazon has certain triggers, certain language. Like according to Amazon, we don't own anything. Okay, they own absolutely everything. You upload a picture, you waive your rights in perpetuity. The customers are Amazon's. You don't own your listing. This goes more to like a plan of action, or if you're making a complaint, just don't use that verbiage. Don't write on our listing. Don't say on the listing, on the listing that we created on Amazon. But you don't really own anything. It's certainly a trigger, or it seems to be a trigger on the people reading these things on the other side. Okay, I am a big believer in not pounding right away. Okay,
come on, man.
See things. Listen, I love David versus Goliath fights. We help sellers against the biggest conglomerate in the history of commerce. Okay,
right.
But when it's seller versus seller, okay, I think it's good business to give someone the opportunity to take themselves off the listing. You don't want to needlessly put someone out of work, needlessly cost them their account. One, I don't think it's the right thing to do. And number two, you're just going to draw problems. I'm even not dropping the hammer at first. You could do a real short leash. You can give them a C&D letter saying, stop selling. This is the reason why. And we're going to give you 48 hours to get off. And they contact you and they say, listen, we got 300 units left and I can't pay my mortgage, or I got a special needs child. Can we sell out our inventory first? It may behoove you to make deals so that you're not really harming someone else's business interests. So we say do a C&D, give a firm deadline, then stick to it, and then cut their legs off. But give the sellers the opportunity to get off the listing. You don't need to burn bridges when our lifeblood is our reviews.
And CJ, I'm sure you've heard of the stories where you do, even when you try to work nice, or even the other approach where you drop the hammer, there's a lot of cases of retribution and a lot of shenanigans on the back end with terrible reviews that because the particular seller you're competing against will get other like-minded sellers against you and go ahead and buy a bunch of product, and you have now a bunch of one-star reviews.
That's right. You don't need to be a stone in a shoe, okay? You can accomplish the same goal and protect your brand and get rid of the hijackers in a little more ethical fashion. And I think that stops a lot of the BS that comes along with immediately cutting someone's legs off. We've seen a lot of blowback,
Okay.
All right. This is what we talked about before, about taking some things that are clearly not under the law in any part of the country, an IP issue, okay, like a map agreement. But if you put that language everywhere you can, on the boxes, on inside of the package, on your invoices, Amazon buys it and says, oh, they agreed that that a cat is a dog. A cat must be a dog. So it just works. It may not work forever, but it certainly works now. Certain add-ons, you're packaging your products, will give you certain ways because the customer is not getting what they would get from you. And these are things that just work. They're not necessarily IP, but they do work to protect your listings and get rid of hijackers. And that is not me with the beard on.
Somebody in your office? Is that somebody from the office?
I'm about to turn around for my beard.
Is that where all your hair was? Wait, CJ, is that where all your hair was displaced to?
Yeah.
Okay, two quick questions. One from Brad. How do you send a cease and desist letter to Amazon themselves?
You can either send it to legal, right? You could send it through seller performance or product quality and get passed up the food chain. You could send it to their outside counsel. You could send it to the address in the business solutions agreement. There's a lot of different places. If you want a list of the addresses, send me an email and I'll send them out to you.
Cool. Jamie asked CJ, what do you do when even IP Shark can't find contact info to send cease and desist letter?
You can do it through your dashboard, and we could do our own research. We've had from time to time had to hire outside consultants so they plant some type of bug in an email that then identifies, who's on the other side. I don't know how it works, but we've been able to do it. But usually you don't have to go that far. Okay, here is some of the things you use as leverage for to persuade, not cut their legs off, but to persuade, okay, another seller to stop hijacking your listing, okay? Let them know that they can lose their whole account or their ASIN. Let them know that in the United States, that if you really have to go to the mattresses, you can get all of their profits, all of them. And no company can do that. That's why when Apple versus Samsung, they settled, because the damages against Samsung was so tremendous, would have put the company under. There's a lot of litigation that's going on. It's growing. It's growing in New York, in the Southern District, in the Northern District of Illinois, the Southern District of Florida, and a couple other courts around the country, where the courts will right away issue orders that not only tell you can't sell anymore, they'll freeze your PayPal, they'll freeze your bank account, they'll reach out to Alipay and Alibaba, and they will just clamp down everything and freeze everything while you fight this thing out. And that just destroys businesses. So it's not like you are impotent, but you also don't have to pull the trigger right away. So
and let me jump in on this one here, because I want to share a story here where we were able to get a couple of hijackers that were listing across multiple ASINs, and that we filed complaints and were able to amicably get them to voluntarily remove themselves, so that you can do that.
We are super, not to pat ourselves. Listen, I'm not the
go ahead,
not
pat
the
yourself.
smartest guy in the world. I got a great team. I mean, I couldn't be happier with my partner and the people we work with. I'm so blessed. This is a way of doing business in a way that preserves the long term. You don't need dozens of sellers and dozens of families that rely upon each seller pissed off at you because you put them out of business. It's just not necessary.
Yeah, you don't need that karma in the world.
Okay.
All right, this is the slide right here.
So a couple of things about this. Number one, all of these tools work together to create so that 1 + 1 = 5. And when you use all of these tools, you will get 1 + 1 = 5. One, from a time management perspective, if you're trying to manage a multiple, whether it's 100 listings, 500, or 10,000, you really want to have a tool that tells you, hey, this happened. And within Sellex, they monitor multiple things that are happening on your listings. But one of the ones that's most relevant to this is hijacking. They tell you, and by the way, I'm not getting any commission or nothing. I'm not affiliated with Sellex. This is just a tool I'm sharing with you guys out there right now. Go ahead and do the trial if they have a trial still, and just take it for a test spin, because it will tell you when it happens. Instead of you having to check every morning or every afternoon all your listings, this will give you a prompt or a notification. Hey, listing XYZ, listing 123, listing 546, and it gives you where to go and what seller and the price that they've put themselves on. So it's very intelligent. So you only spend time where you need to, rather than all across all the listings every single day. Brand registry. Again, if you're a trademark, you have your trademark, you can participate in this Amazon program, and you can have a lot more control over what's happening on your listings. If you're a reseller, this is probably not going to be available to you. Unfortunately, again, it's just for trademark owners. One of the other things that we have found, especially when working with legal folks or organizations like CJ, is you want to present both to Amazon and them information on what your listings used to look like. And one of the ways to do that is with Wayback Machine, because as in the first example I showed where the listings changed and they moved the images, you want to present your case in the strongest fashion as possible. And this tool allows you at a certain time, whenever you want to go ahead, essentially it's keeping a record of a listing and what it looked like at a certain point in time. So when it is hijacked, you can go back and say, hey, look, wait, this is what they changed, their images, the bullets, the content, all this other stuff. So you have that there. It's free. The other thing is the Amazon infringement. So what CJ was talking about earlier, this is a way you can, it's an online form that Amazon has that anybody could use, whether you're a trademark holder or not, because sometimes you're a reseller and you find out that your competition is not actually shipping the product that you say you're listing, and you can file a complaint that way as well through this portal. So all of these four, there's so many things out there, but this is the thing that's you can get the most bang for the buck and low cost. And I love low cost things that get you a lot of ROI. And all four of these together, again, 1 + 1 = 5.
Cool. That's awesome.
One of the things, you know what, you could get to the end. I can summarize this, go through this slide. Keep going, right there. So in this case study, what we did, what I alluded to earlier, was we had several ASINs across the board that were being hijacked. And we were able to talk with our attorney about this and have him contact the sellers that are hijackers and say, hey, can you remove yourself from this listing? And if you do so, we will retract our complaint with Amazon. So he filed a complaint with Amazon at the same time as these hijackers were on there. Amazon responded right away within a day. And within a few days, within 5 days, we were able to complete the whole process that normally takes weeks and months to do. And not only did the hijackers come off of those listings, but they agreed to get themselves off of all the listings. And in that email that we sent to the hijackers, a lot of people don't have success getting a response. A lawyer or an organization like CJ's can get a response most of the time and say, hey, if you remove yourselves, we may withdraw the complaint, and we're going to give you X amount of days to do that. and they go away. And now instead of spending your time on all these hijacked ASINs, you focus on a few, and then they remove themselves from all of the rest of the listings. But the important thing here is having an organization like CJ's behind you, or another one, wherever, if you're already working with one, you can get a lot further. You can get results a lot quicker. Yes, it's going to cost you some money, but is the aggravation really worth it to you? And a lot of times it's not.
I got to tell you also,
I also wanted to interject, CJ, real quick. I just want to say that not every organization actually understands Amazon. It's like the Wild West. So it's not every little organization gets it. CJ is one of the few that I've found that actually does get the Amazon world. So I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, I will echo that, because we've been in the online space for 15 years, and I got to tell you, there are a handful of lawyers that are at the top of their game, or organizations that really get Amazon. You really need to work with some. If you're using some organizations like they breathe this every day. They know the nuances. They know the ebbs and flows, because things change and evolve all the time. And if you don't have somebody that has their finger on the pulse, instead of taking a few days, like CJ, he could probably talk about this himself, getting a few days in terms of results, it can still take weeks or months, because they just don't understand how Amazon works.
Yeah, it really should. It's a quick process. We often, I said, C&D letters first, but when it comes to knocking people off, if they don't get off on their own, it's a quick thing. Also, we've seen a lot of traditional law firms who'll charge you like, 7/10 of an hour at $400 an hour to send a single cease and desist letter. Once you're doing it every day, and our team is doing it, we could probably do 20 in an hour, and it's done by a paralegal. So we're quick, we're efficient, because this is what we do every day. You really want to watch how you're doing it, how quickly. If it's weeks or months, you're doing it wrong. Okay, you want to identify what the issue is, what is your strength, what is your leverage, and then execute, and days, if that long, to get the hijackers off your products.
Oh, and for the folks that are on this call, I guess we're wrapping up. If you want to have a brand protection audit, I'm offering the first 10 folks that hit me up on email, 15-minute session to discuss your situation and possible remedies and what can be done regarding your particular brand, if you're a brand owner or even a reseller for that matter. Because again, we resell products, and we also have a private label area, so we understand both worlds. So the first 10 that go ahead and hit me up on email, I'll be glad to work with you and see how we can help you out.
All right, Ben asked a question of whether MAP or unauthorized is enough to get you suspended. It's not, and it shouldn't be. We have seen it once in a blue moon, but generally it's not. Amazon specifically writes in their blurbs that they don't honor that type of stuff. So it's certainly not enough. In the United States, you have the first sale doctrine. You can buy and sell basically anything that you want.
And so I'll tell you, CJ, MAP is not enough to get somebody off of Amazon. Because Amazon, the language they use is it's something that the seller or the manufacturer should handle offline with that particular seller, and they don't want to be involved in the middle when it comes to MAP pricing and all of the mess with MAP violations. That's
100% accurate. And the United States Supreme Court ruled on this in 2007 or so, that said if you didn't sign it, you're not subject to it. So, all right, here's my offer. You got a copy of the book on the screen. You send your physical address, email, send it however. I'll send you a free copy of our book. It is the latest information on how to first avoid suspensions. And again, an ounce of prevention is worth like 50 pounds of cure. We'll send you a free hard copy of the book. And if you lose an ASIN or your account gets suspended, it gives examples and language you can try and use. And I'm into paying it forward. I'm into teaching you how to help yourselves, and that's what the book does. So send your physical address, and I'll mail you a copy of Your Guide to Amazon Suspensions. It's the 2017-2018 edition. It's the newest book that's out there, and not just because I wrote it, because I have a whole team behind me. It is the best. It's not fluff. It teaches you how to handle these issues yourself.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for joining today. We're out of time. That wraps it up. Again, thank you guys again for coming. Thanks everyone for listening. And we'll be sending out the replay probably in a couple of days. So stay tuned.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot, Chad.
Thank you, Chad.